You know that feeling, right before a big moment in your life when everything just seems to settle? Like you're standing in the quiet eye of a hurricane of your own happiness. That was me, the night before my wedding. My life felt perfect. Not in a cheesy rom-com kind of way, but in a deep, quiet, profoundly grateful way. I was about to marry Chloe, the woman who made the world make sense. And standing right beside me, as he had for the last 15 years, was my best man, Liam. The two most important people in my world. The rehearsal dinner was winding down. Laughter and the clinking of glasses filled the warm, low-lit room. Liam stood up to give his toast, a smug grin already playing on his lips. I braced myself. This was their favorite game. "I'd like to raise a glass," he began, his voice carrying easily, "to Chloe, a woman of many qualities, one of which is the incredible patience it must take to listen to my best friend talk about the history of Roman aqueducts for 3 hours straight." A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. She has somehow managed to turn a man of action into a man who has strong opinions on throw pillows. "Chloe, I don't know how you did it, but you did. May your life together be as tasteful as your wedding decorations, and may you always have the upper hand." He winked at her, and she rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. She picked up her own glass. "And to Liam," she said, her voice clear and sharp, "who taught me that it's possible for one man to have so many strong opinions and yet be wrong about every single one. Thank you for setting the bar so low that anyone else would look like a genius by comparison." The room roared with laughter this time. Even my dad was wiping a tear from his eye. "But seriously, Liam," she added, her smile softening just a little, "thank you for being here. That was them. That was their whole dynamic. It started years ago over a viciously competitive game of Catan, and it just never stopped. It became our running joke. Liam, the sarcastic, cynical best friend, Chloe, the sharp-witted, brilliant fiancé, and me, the happy, amused mediator caught in the middle of their endless, harmless war of words. I loved it. I loved that the two people I loved most in the world had a bond, even if it was forged in sarcasm. Later that night, I was back in my hotel suite, the city lights twinkling below. I loosened my tie, feeling the residual warmth of the evening, the sheer, unadulterated joy of it all. In less than 24 hours, Chloe would be my wife. My life was exactly where I wanted it to be. Liam texted that he was running a bit late, but he was on his way up for one last drink as a single man, and he asked if I could just do him a quick favor. The text from Liam was casual, almost an afterthought. "Running a bit late, man. Traffic is insane. Hey, I left my tablet on the desk in your suite earlier. Can you do me a favor and make sure it's charging? Battery's probably dead. Be there in 20. "No problem," I texted back, smiling. Classic Liam. I found the tablet sitting next to a stack of hotel stationery, sleek and black. I picked it up, grabbing the charging cable from my own bag. The familiar click of the charger connecting echoed in the quiet room. The screen flickered to life, and that's when my perfect world started to crack at the seams. A banner notification slid down from the top of the lock screen. It was from a messaging app I didn't recognize. The sender was just a single letter. See, my first thought was, who's C? My brain immediately started cycling through possibilities, trying to find a logical, innocent explanation. Catherine? From his office? Maybe Claire, that girl he went on a few dates with last year. It had to be a new girlfriend he hadn't told me about yet. That made sense. And then I read the words underneath the single letter. The message preview. He has no idea. I can't wait until this is all over and I can be with you without pretending. The air left my lungs. I read the sentence again. And again. The words just swam in front of my eyes. He has no idea. Who's he? I can't wait until this is all over. All what is over? My wedding? Without pretending. Pretending what? A cold, slick dread started to creep up my spine. It had to be a mistake. A misunderstanding. Maybe Liam was helping one of Chloe's bridesmaids with a surprise for me? It was a ridiculous, flimsy thought, but it was all my brain could come up with to stop the horrible, sickening certainty that was starting to form in the pit of my stomach. C, the first letter of my fiancé's name, Chloe. No, it couldn't be. It was impossible. My finger, seemingly with a mind of its own, moved towards the screen. It trembled slightly as it hovered over the notification. A part of my brain was screaming at me to stop, to put the tablet down, walk away, and just wait for Liam to get here and explain this horrible coincidence. But I couldn't. I had to know. My thumb pressed down on the glass, and just like that, the screen unlocked, not to a single message, but to a library. A library filled with years of their lies. I started scrolling. Up, up, past today's message, past yesterday's, past last week's. My thumb swiping frantically as I traveled back in time, watching my entire reality unravel with each flick of my finger. This wasn't a new thing. A recent mistake. This went back years. The betrayal wasn't just in the romantic messages, the ones that made my stomach clench with a sick, twisting jealousy. It was in the casual cruelty, the condescension. They had nicknames for me. Nicknames I never knew. The Professor, whenever I'd get excited about a documentary. The Golden Retriever, when I was just being happy. They'd laugh about how easy I was to please, how completely, utterly oblivious I was. Every inside joke I thought the three of us shared was actually a joke on me. I stopped at a date from 2 years ago. Our first anniversary. I remembered that day perfectly. We had a beautiful dinner, and I gave her a delicate silver necklace. I remembered Liam texting me that afternoon. "Good luck tonight, man. Don't get all sappy on her. What a good friend," but here, on the screen, was the real story of that day. A message from Chloe to Liam, sent an hour before our dinner. "He's taking me to that stuffy Italian place. Kill me now." "I wish it was you," Liam's reply. "Just think about me when he gives you some tacky gift. I'll make it up to you tomorrow." Then, the day I proposed. The happiest day of my life. I had the ring in my pocket for weeks, agonizing over the perfect moment. I did it on a hike, at a spot overlooking the entire city. She cried. She said yes. It was perfect, or so I thought. Here was the message she sent Liam not an hour later, while I was probably still beaming like an idiot. It was a picture of the ring on her finger. The caption, "Well, I'm in. This is going to be complicated." Complicated. Not "I love you," not "I can't wait," just complicated. The more I read, the more I saw how they'd done it. The secret meetups were hidden in plain sight, disguised as acts of friendship. Liam helping me pick out Chloe's Christmas gift was actually a long romantic lunch with her. Chloe's girls' night out with Amy was a lie. A message from that night read, "Amy just canceled. Thank God, now I have a real excuse to come over." But the single most brutal discovery, the message that made the world go red at the edges, was the one where they laid out their master plan. It was a conversation from years ago, right after that first argument over a board game. "This is perfect," Chloe had written. "This rivalry. We can just pretend to hate each other. No one will ever suspect. We can be as intense as we want in public, and they'll all just think we're fighting." Liam's reply, "You are a genius. A beautiful, evil genius, their feud. Their running joke. The thing I thought was a quirky, harmless part of our dynamic. It was a lie. A carefully constructed, long-term psychological operation. And I was the only target. Every single memory I had of the three of us together was suddenly a lie. And as I scrolled through this library of my own humiliation, I had to relive each one of them through their eyes. With the chat logs open in front of me, my own memories started to play back in my head, but twisted and corrupted by the truth. It was like watching a movie of my life where I was the only person in the theater who didn't know the ending. I remembered a New Year's Eve party a few years ago. Chloe and Liam had gotten into a huge, spectacular argument. It was over something stupid, politics, I think. It ended with Liam slamming his drink down on the counter and storming out the back door, and Chloe running upstairs, crying, locking herself in the guest room. I spent the next hour playing mediator, running between them, trying to smooth things over. "He didn't mean it, Chloe," I'd said. "You know how he gets." Then I'd go outside and say, "Just apologize. Liam, you know you went too far." But the chat logs from that night told a different story. Liam, low 3 p.m. "Okay, I'm heading out the back. That was a good one. You were very convincing with the tears." Chloe, 11:04 p.m. "Give me 5 minutes to let him calm me down, then meet me by your car in the back lot. No one will see us there. They hadn't been fighting. They had been performing. And I was the star of their show, and the little things. My God, the little things were even worse. I remembered all the times Chloe would complain to me in private. Liam is just so arrogant, she'd sigh, leaning her head on my shoulder. I don't know how you put up with him sometimes. And then Liam, over a beer, would say, seriously, dude, how can you stand her taste in movies? It's physically painful. It was all an act. Every complaint, every sarcastic jab, every eye roll, it was all part of the script. A script they had written together to make me feel like I was the center of their universe, the one indispensable person who held their fractured relationship together, and I played my part perfectly. I was the good fiancé, the loyal best friend. I defended them to each other constantly. She's not that bad, Liam. Just give her a chance. He doesn't mean it like that, Chloe. That's just his sense of humor. I was their unwitting pawn, their alibi, their excuse to constantly be in each other's orbit. I wasn't just a victim of their affair. I was an active and pathetic participant in its cover-up. My entire friendship with my best man, my entire romance with my fiancé. It wasn't just a lie. It was a joke. A long-running, elaborate, and deeply cruel joke, and I was the punchline. And as that realization settled in, I heard a keycard slide into the lock of my hotel room door. Liam was here, ready to celebrate. The door swung open, and Liam breezed in, holding up a bottle of 18-year-old scotch like a trophy. He was beaming, the picture of a proud best man. "Ready for the last rites of your freedom, buddy?" he said, his voice full of that familiar, easygoing charm. "I figured we'd send you off in style." He stopped. I hadn't moved from the chair. I hadn't even looked up. I was just sitting there, staring at the tablet on the coffee table, my whole body buzzing with a cold, humming rage. "Hey," he said, his smile faltering slightly. "Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I slowly lifted my head and looked at him. Really looked at him. My best friend. My brother. The man who was supposed to stand beside me tomorrow. And I felt nothing. The 15 years of our friendship, all the memories, all the laughter, it had all been incinerated in the last hour. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. My voice, when it came out, was quiet. Dead quiet. I just nodded towards the tablet. The screen was still lit up, displaying the open chat log. "Explain C," I said. It was incredible to watch. It was like seeing a statue crumble in fast motion. The color physically drained from his face, leaving a sickly gray pallor behind. The confident smirk he always wore just melted away, replaced by a wide-eyed, slack-jawed panic. His eyes darted from my face to the tablet screen and back again, his brain clearly short-circuiting as it tried to process the impossible. I don't know what you're talking about," he stammered, his hand, the one holding the scotch, starting to tremble. "See, that's my cousin Clara. It's a family thing, man, you wouldn't get it." The lie was so pathetic, so desperate. A year ago, I would have believed it. An hour ago, I might have even been relieved to hear it. But not now. I had the receipts. I just stared at him, my expression unchanging. I picked up the tablet, my finger tracing a single line of text on the screen. "Tell me, Liam," I said, my voice still unnervingly calm. "Does your cousin Clara also call you her beautiful, evil genius?" And that was it. The final blow. I watched the last bit of fight drain out of him. His shoulders slumped. The bottle of scotch slipped from his fingers and thudded onto the carpeted floor. He staggered backwards and fell into the armchair opposite me, completely and utterly defeated. He just sat there, staring at the floor. And I knew that even his confession was going to be pathetic. He finally looked up, his face a mask of pathetic, self-serving misery. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words sounding hollow and useless in the silent room. "Man, I'm so sorry." I just stared at him. Sorry wasn't a big enough word for this. There wasn't a word in the entire English language big enough for this. It just happened, he stammered, running a hand through his hair. It was a mistake. A stupid mistake that just kept going. We never meant for it to get this far. We never ever meant to hurt you. Never meant to hurt me. The words were so absurd, so insulting, I almost laughed. They didn't mean to hurt me? They had spent years building a complex architecture of lies with me as its sole resident. Hurting me wasn't a byproduct of their affair. It was the foundation. Whose idea was it? I asked, my voice still devoid of emotion. The rivalry. Whose idea was that? He had the decency to look ashamed. Chloe's, he admitted, his voice barely audible. She said it was brilliant. That no one would ever look twice. That it would let us hide in plain sight. He finally seemed to grasp the enormity of the situation, the sheer, catastrophic fallout that was about to occur. Panic flickered in his eyes again. "Look," he said, leaning forward, his voice taking on a pleading, desperate tone. "We can fix this. We can, just call it off. Call Chloe. Tell her you have cold feet. We can cancel the wedding quietly. No one has to know why. Please, man, don't ruin everyone's lives over this. Think about your parents. Think about her parents. Just let it go. Let it go. He wanted me to swallow this Grand Canyon of betrayal, and just quietly cancel my own wedding to protect them, to protect their secret. He wasn't sorry he had done it. He was just sorry he got caught. I stood up. I felt a strange, unnerving calm settle over me. The shock was gone, the rage was gone. All that was left was a cold, hard clarity. I knew exactly what I had to do. Get out, I said. He looked up at me, confused. What? Get out of my room, now! He scrambled to his feet, his face a mess of confusion and fear. He started to say something, another pathetic apology, but I held up a hand to stop him. Just one more thing, I said, my voice like ice. Tomorrow. You be there. You put on your suit. You stand up there at the altar right next to me, and you smile like nothing is wrong. He just stared at me, uncomprehending. You will stand there, and you will watch, I continued. You don't get to run and hide from this. You owe me that. He just nodded, a slight jerky movement, then turned and practically fled from the room, leaving the bottle of scotch lying on the floor like a fallen soldier. And as the door clicked shut behind him, I bypassed the grief and the anger and entered a state of pure, hyper-focused resolve. I didn't sleep. I don't think I even blinked. The hours between midnight and dawn were a blur of cold, methodical preparation. The grief, the shock, the rage. I packed it all away in a neat little box in the back of my mind. There would be time for that later. For now, there was only the mission. I spent the first hour on Liam's tablet, my fingers flying across the screen. Screenshot, scroll, screenshot, scroll. I was a digital archivist, meticulously documenting the evidence of my own destruction. I saved the most damning messages, the most cruel jokes, the most explicit plans. I created a folder and named it simply Proof. Then I made the phone calls. The first was to my dad. It was 3 a.m, but he answered on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep and immediate concern. Son, what is it? What's wrong? I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just told him. I laid out the facts calmly and chronologically, like I was delivering a business report. The tablet. The messages. The rivalry. The years-long lie. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. When I was finished, there was a long, heavy silence on the line. I could hear him breathing. Finally, he just said, "What are you going to do?" I told him my plan for the ceremony. Every last detail. Another silence. Then his voice, when it came, was like granite. "I'll be there. Your mother and I will be right behind you." He didn't question me. He didn't offer advice. He just offered his unwavering support. And in that moment, it was the only thing holding me together. The second call was harder. I dialed Chloe's father. He was a good man. A kind man who had welcomed me into his family with open arms. Waking him up with this news felt like a betrayal in itself. His reaction was predictable. Stunned disbelief. "Son, that's impossible," he said, his voice ragged. "There must be some mistake. Chloe loves you." "I thought so too," I replied, my voice flat. "I'm sending you an email. It will have everything you need to see. I'm sorry to do this to you, but you deserve to know the truth before tomorrow." I sent him the proof folder. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with a reply. A single, heartbroken word. Okay. My final task was at the hotel's 24-hour business center. The loan attendant looked at me with tired, indifferent eyes as I printed out page after page of screenshots. I sorted them, highlighted the most vicious lines, and made several copies. Walking back to my room, a stack of warm paper in my hand, I realized something strange. I felt no sadness, no anger, no fear. All of that was gone. All that was left was a hollow, empty space. And a cold, clear, and absolute need for the truth to be exposed. The sun was just starting to rise, casting a pale, gray light over the city. It was my wedding day, and it was going to be a beautiful day for a reckoning. The venue was perfect. Of course it was. Chloe had spent a year planning every last detail. It was an old, converted botanical garden, with vaulted glass ceilings and enormous ferns dripping from the rafters. Sunlight streamed in, making everything look clean and hopeful. The air smelled of lilies and damp earth. A string quartet was playing something soft and classical. Our friends and family were all there, dressed in their best, smiling, whispering excitedly. It was a perfect day for a perfect wedding, a perfect stage for a perfect lie. I stood at the altar, my hands clasped loosely in front of me. Beside me, Liam was a ghost in a tuxedo. His face was pale, almost translucent, and a thin sheen of sweat glistened on his forehead despite the cool air. He stared straight ahead, his eyes fixed on some point in the middle distance, refusing to look at me, refusing to look at anyone. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. I, on the other hand, felt strangely calm, utterly detached. It was the strangest sensation, like I was floating a few inches above my own body, watching a movie of someone else's life. I could see my friends in the front row giving me encouraging smiles and thumbs up. I could see my father, his face a grim, supportive mask. And I could see Chloe's father, looking 10 years older than he had the day before, his eyes hollow and heartbroken. The rest of the guests were a blur of color and happy, oblivious faces. Then the music changed. The quartet swelled into the opening notes of the wedding march. Everyone stood up. Every head in the room turned to face the back of the aisle, and there she was, Chloe. She looked radiant. It was the only word for it. Her dress was a cloud of white, her hair was a cascade of dark curls, and her face was a study in pure, unadulterated joy. She was beaming, her eyes shining, her smile so wide and genuine it could have lit up the entire room. She looked like the happiest woman in the world. She didn't see the tension. She didn't see the ghost standing beside me. She saw only me, her groom, waiting for her at the end of the aisle. And as she began her slow, happy walk towards her own destruction, the contrast between the beautiful lie she was living and the ugly truth I was holding in my pocket was so vast, so staggering, it felt like it could swallow the world. As she reached the altar and took my hands in hers, her smile never faltered. Her hands were warm. Mine were ice cold. It was time for the vows. The officiant smiled warmly. "And now," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the vast glass room, "the couple will share the vows they have written for each other." Chloe turned to face me, her eyes shining. She unfolded a small piece of paper, her hands trembling just slightly with what I and everyone else assumed was happy nervousness. She began to read. Her vows were beautiful. They were perfect. They were filled with poetic lies about trust and honesty and a lifetime of fidelity. She spoke of our shared future, of growing old together, of being each other's constant, unshakable rock. She finished by saying, "You are my home." A few people in the front row dabbed at their eyes. I just stared at her, my face a blank, unreadable mask. She folded the paper and looked at me, her face full of loving expectation. The officiant gestured to me. "And now your vows." I took a small step forward. I reached into the inside pocket of my tuxedo and pulled out, not a small, neatly folded piece of paper, but the stack of printed-out screenshots I had prepared during the longest night of my life. "I won't be reading the vows I wrote," I said, my voice clear, steady, and amplified by the officiant's microphone. A small murmur of confusion rippled through the guests. Chloe's smile faltered, a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "Instead," I continued, my eyes locking onto hers, "I'd like to read some vows that Chloe has apparently already made. To my best man, Liam." I heard a sharp, collective gasp from the crowd. The string quartet, unsure of what to do, let their bows fall silent. The sudden, absolute quiet was deafening. I looked at Liam. His head was down, his face completely hidden. I lifted the first page. "From Chloe to Liam on the night of our first anniversary," I read, my voice ringing out in the silent room. "He's taking me to that stuffy Italian place. Kill me now. I wish it was you." I moved to the next page. "From Chloe to Liam on the night I proposed." I held up the screenshot of the ring. "Well, I'm in. This is going to be complicated." I kept going. I read their mocking nicknames for me. The Professor. The Golden Retriever. I read their plans for a secret getaway after the honeymoon. I read their self-congratulatory messages about how their fake rivalry was a brilliant and genius plan to hide in plain sight. I didn't stumble. I didn't raise my voice. I just read the words. Their words. A calm, methodical execution of a beautiful lie, and with every word I read, the perfect sunlit wedding shattered into a million irreparable pieces. I watched Chloe's face as I read. Her expression shifted in agonizingly slow motion through a series of emotions. First, confusion as she tried to understand what I was doing. Then, a dawning, sickening horror as she recognized her own words. And finally, a desperate, cornered animal fury. "Stop it," she hissed, her voice a low, strangled whisper. "Stop it right now." She lunged forward, her perfectly manicured nails scrabbling for the papers in my hand, trying to rip them away. "What are you doing?" she screamed, her voice cracking, the beautiful illusion of the loving bride shattering completely. I just held the papers out of her reach and continued to read, my voice never wavering. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Liam. He was a statue of shame, still frozen in place, head bowed, refusing to look up. His own parents were staring at him from the second row, their faces a mixture of disbelief and utter devastation. I had thought nothing could hurt me anymore, but seeing the pain on their faces, the innocent collateral damage of this whole thing, that was a different kind of wound. Then, a movement from Chloe's side of the family. Her father, a man I had respected and admired, slowly, deliberately rose to his feet. He didn't say a word. He just looked at his daughter. The love and pride that had been in his eyes just minutes before were gone, replaced by a look of such profound, bottomless disgust that it made my own stomach turn. He held her gaze for a single crushing second, then turned his back on her and walked, stiff and straight, down the aisle and out of the venue. That was the moment the chaos truly erupted, a cacophony of shocked gasps, angry whispers, and a few of Chloe's bridesmaids bursting into tears. I read the final damning message from the last page. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment. Then I carefully, almost gently, placed the stack of papers on the altar. I finally looked at Chloe, at the beautiful stranger with the ruined face, and said the two words that should have been said years ago. "It's over." Then I turned, and I walked away. I walked down that long, flower-strewn aisle, past the stunned, horrified faces of our guests. And as I reached the end, my own family, my mother, my father, my sister, all stood up in unison, and they followed me out into the sunlight. The weeks that followed were a blur of logistics and fallout, but I was surrounded by the people who truly had my back. My phone didn't stop buzzing for 3 days straight. It was a relentless flood of texts and calls from nearly every person who had been in that room. Some were just shocked, asking if I was okay, but most of them were messages of incredible support. People I hadn't spoken to in years reached out to tell me how brave I was and to express their absolute disgust at what Chloe and Liam had done. The story had spread like wildfire. I learned through a mutual friend who was trying to navigate the wreckage that the fallout on their side was catastrophic. Chloe's family was completely fractured. Her father wasn't speaking to her, and her mother was caught in the impossible position of defending a daughter whose betrayal had been so spectacularly, publicly exposed. Liam apparently had just vanished. He'd deleted all his social media and wasn't answering calls from anyone. He had become a ghost, a social pariah overnight. I didn't have time to dwell on their drama, though. I had my own to dismantle. My life had been a shared one, and now I had to painstakingly untangle it, thread by painful thread. There were the practicalities, the mundane tasks that felt both overwhelming and strangely therapeutic. Canceling the honeymoon to Hawaii, that was a tough call. Listening to the sympathetic travel agent refund the tickets felt like burying a future I had so vividly imagined. Then there was the apartment. Our apartment. I packed my life into cardboard boxes, a sad parade of books, clothes, and memories. Each object was a tiny landmine of what-ifs and could-have-beens. Every task, from changing my mailing address to calling the caterer, was a small, necessary step towards closure. But I wasn't alone. Not for a second. My groomsmen, -1, obviously were incredible. They were my rock. They showed up at my apartment with pizza and beer and just sat with me. They didn't offer platitudes or try to cheer me up. They just created a space where it was okay to not be okay. They helped me pack. They took me out to a ball game, not to forget, but just to feel normal for a few hours. They listened when I needed to talk and sat in comfortable silence when I didn't. They showed me, through their quiet, unwavering presence, what true loyalty, what true friendship actually looked like. It took a few months for the noise to die down, for life to find a new, quieter rhythm, and just when I thought I was finally truly done with all of it, I received one last pathetic message. A few months had passed. The world had settled back on its axis. I had a new apartment, a new routine, The raw, open wound of the betrayal had scarred over, leaving a dull ache where a life used to be. I was healing. It was a slow, quiet process, but it was real. One Tuesday morning, as I was sipping my coffee and scrolling through work emails, a notification popped up. It was from a generic, unfamiliar address, a string of letters and numbers. But the subject line made my blood run cold. It just said, "Please read." My first instinct was to delete it without opening, but I knew I wouldn't be able to let it go. I had to see it through to the very end. I clicked. It was from Chloe. The email was long. A rambling, self-pitying monologue that was a true masterclass in narcissism. She started by saying she knew she had made a mistake, but that was the only accountability she ever took. The rest was all about me. The real crime, according to her, wasn't the years of lies. It wasn't the affair with my best friend. No. The real crime was that I had chosen to publicly humiliate her instead of handling the situation privately, with dignity. She wrote about the damage to her reputation, the loss of friends, the pain my actions had caused her. She minimized the affair, calling it a complicated friendship that had crossed a line. She even had the audacity to suggest that I was partly to blame, that if I had been more attentive, more emotionally available, maybe she wouldn't have had to seek comfort elsewhere. I read the whole thing, every last pathetic, self-serving word. And I waited for the anger, for the familiar hot surge of rage and betrayal to rise up in my chest. But it never came. Instead, I just felt a profound sense of finality. I saw her and Liam with a kind of sad, distant clarity. They weren't monsters. They weren't evil geniuses. They were just small, weak, selfish, pathetic people who had built a fantasy world because they were too cowardly to live in the real one. And in that moment, I realized they had no more power over me. The joke wasn't on me anymore. The punchline was them. My cursor hovered over the delete button. I didn't type a reply. There was nothing left to say. I clicked the little trash can icon and the email vanished. I leaned back in my chair, took a deep, clean breath, and for the first time in a very long time, I felt genuinely completely free.